Hi folks, Harry Frank from Red Giant here. In this tutorial, I'd like to show you what I call instant titles inside Adobe Premiere Pro. And to do this, we'll be using a plugin called Glo Phi from Red Giant Universe. Glo Phi was designed based on my experience as a freelance motion designer. I took a lot of the things I often do with text to kind of add some interesting glow effects to them and basically packaged it up inside one little plugin. So there's a lot of stuff that happens inside here, like fractal noise, color mapping, blurring, glow maps, and lots of very specific tweaks to the glows and levels of things to get this really nice sort of shimmering organic effect. And it really kind of gives you these instantaneous, really cool titles right at your fingertips. So let me show you how you would set something like this up. So let's just create a new sequence. I'm not going to worry about the settings right now because I'm just going to use a backdrop animation in here, drop it in here, and change our sequence settings to match that. So this is a backdrop animation that was supplied, and we need to put a title on top of this. And by the way, this background was made entirely in Adobe After Effects using Trapcode Form for the stars, Trapcode Mirror for the nebula and the background, and the lens flare off to the side is Null Light Factory. Now the backdrop is pretty static. There's not a lot going on. There's a slow camera move. So we really need to add something interesting to the foreground. So let's add our title. Let's go up to title, new title, and create a still. Okay, so let's go to our text tool, type out our title. Let's set this to be centered. We'll use a typeface called Event Horizon. Let's bring up this font size and bring out that tracking. Close this out and drop this new title right into our timeline. Now I know I promised instantaneous titles, but I'm going to do something real quick here before I drop our cool effects on here, which is do just a little bit of a scale animation. So I'm going to have it end right here at a scale of 100%, right at 6 seconds. And at the beginning, I'll set this to 85%. Let's also ease this second keyframe in. Now, let's go to our effects under video effects and locate universe Glo Phi right here. Glo Phi is specifically designed for text. The short story with Glo Phi is that it starts with a pattern, basically a noise pattern, a large fractal noise pattern, and it intersects that with the alpha channel of the text. To this pattern, there is a number of blurs, color maps, and glows that are added to this to basically make it a very instantaneous title. This animates on its own. It will loop automatically on its own, defaulting to 5 seconds. We have a speed control and all that kind of stuff. So without making a whole lot of changes, it really is kind of an instantaneous title effect. Now, without having to tweak a whole lot of things, we can jump into the color presets here and create some very different looks with just a couple clicks of a button. So if I select this snow color preset, maybe I'll bring the glow brightness down just a little bit to make it more subtle. Let's see that with the background, but maybe I want to match the color of that background a little more closely. So I'll use the color picker for the second one here. Let's pick something right out of the frame for the first and second colors. Let's boost this glow brightness up. There we go. Now this is really starting to match our scene. So let's have this effect fade out starting at that, or maybe just before that 6 second mark. So at 5 seconds, we'll go to glow brightness, set a keyframe for that, and then by 7 seconds, we'll have this completely end. Now, one thing I should do that I haven't yet is change the blending mode of this top layer so that it is blending a little more naturally with the background. Let's go to our blend mode, set this to screen, and it'll make things blend a lot better. So because Glo Phi is so easy to use, and with just a couple tweaks, we've got a pretty decent title going, this leaves us with extra time to kind of experiment. And I'd like to show you some ideas that you can use to think a little bit more creatively and kind of dive a little deeper into this plugin. So I'm going to make a copy of this. So this whole track, I'm just going to duplicate and move up to the second track by holding down the Option key. So I just have two identical tracks. Now, this top track, I'm going to go into the blend mode of the plugin itself, the Glo Phi plugin. This is how the effect, the glow effect, blends with the source layer. So in this case, it's how the blue glow blends with that white text. So I'll go to my blend mode and set this to none. And essentially what I'm doing is rendering just the effect. And then on this one right down here, I'm actually going to reset this effect for now and turn the glow brightness all the way to 0. In fact, let's click this stopwatch and delete all the keyframes. I'm just going to turn this glow brightness down to 0 for now. So I have two tracks of my text. One is the effect and one is the text. So now I'm free to add additional effects on top of this glow layer. So I could go back into my glows here and start to get creative. So I could do something simple like drop diffuse glow on here, which is really just kind of a very soft film-like kind of glow. So I can turn up this intensity and even spread it out along that same axis. More interesting than that, we can use something like chromatic glow. Chromatic glow is a standard glow, but it divides everything into separate channels and does some separate offsetting of each channel. So red, green, and blue are offset just a little bit from each other. And that gives us this sort of color-separated glow. So I'll bring this threshold up so we can still see more of that original color of the blue. I'll bring this intensity up. So that chromatic glow with the red, green, and blue separation really gives that glow a very different feel. So what I need to do is sort of find a way to bring the text on. Now, here's where we start to think creatively. So I left that Glo Phi plugin on the first title here, if you remember. So let me turn up that glow brightness just so we can see it. So being that I haven't changed the speed or anything like that, we'll see that the pattern is going to be the same between the two tracks. So on this second track, instead of using the actual glow effect, I'm going to go into the pattern here and say show pattern. And what we'll do is use this to bring on the text. And because these patterns align, I can reveal the text in the same areas as the glow. Now, to bring the text on entirely, I'll go in and tweak the amplitude and contrast of the glow. So this kind of gets into the nuts and bolts of what Glo Phi is doing. So it's essentially a sort of blobby fractal noise kind of pattern that intersects with the alpha channel of your text. So those blobby areas have a brightness, or basically an amplitude of that noise, and there's a contrast. So if I bring the contrast down, we'll have less and less contrast until where the text starts to just kind of even out. So if I can find a setting where I have as close to a solid piece of text as possible, I can use that to kind of reveal the text and follow the same pattern as the glow. So right here, let's set a couple keyframes. So let me bring this back to the beginning, and let's bring this contrast up. And what I want to do is bring the amplitude down so that the text is no longer there. So probably at this halfway point, I might want to do a little bit more dramatic of an amplitude and contrast for a little bit while it sort of evolves with that glow effect. So let's see how those look together. So it comes from nothing and starts to sort of fade in with that glow effect, and then it kind of fully comes on as we lower that contrast all the way down. Now, if you'd like to kind of solidify this text a little bit more, I can add one more layer on top. So I'll just drag this one up again, and we'll just totally remove that title and just do a simple fade in. Now we could cross dissolve this, but I'm an After Effects guy, I think in terms of keyframes. So I'm gonna just set a keyframe actually right there and right there. So we'll just have it go from 0 to 100 to kind of fade that text on full. There. Let's turn on that background. So now we need to bring on this glow effect from the beginning. So what I could do is perhaps animate the blur radius. So let's set this to where we want it to be finished, maybe at the 2-second mark, and set a keyframe for the radius, the blur radius, and set that all the way down to 0. Now at this point, to make it go away, we are basically just seeing the pattern at this point. So I could bring the amplitude of this pattern down. That would be one way. So let's set a keyframe a little bit forward here. It doesn't have to be exactly 2 seconds. And at the beginning, set that amplitude to 0. So that about does it for this instant titles with Glo Phi from Red Giant Universe. My name's Harry Frank. Thank you so much for watching.